Hello riding buddies, this is Oregon Moto John. We're just going to cover some of the mods that I've done to this 22 FE350S. A lot of them would apply to KTM EXE. So let's get started. The first thing I had to do to this bike was add this Akrapovic carbon fiber header protector. I promptly, upon riding it home from the dealership, burned a hole in my Gore-Tex riding pants. So this went on. That's great. I never burned a hole in anything else again. It's just I guess a factory part for this bike. So for me anyway, that was actually the first thing I did. But then once you do that, what you're going to find is you can't get your oil to do an oil change out. You can't get your cap off. So I found this Takomoto oil filler cap to be helpful because you can sneak it out. It's low profile and sneak it in under that. You don't have to loosen up the clamps on the guard every time. So that was the second thing I did. So that's a nice little piece they make for that. Plus you can do it by hand. You don't need tools if you need to add oil in the field. So those are some nice little upgrades. Some of the first things that I did. Another upgrade that I did that isn't a big cost, but I think it's a good one, is this twin air little gas tank pre-filter that you put in your gas tank. And this is just kind of it just literally slips in there. So when you put gas in the machine, it has to pass through that twin air outwards kind of pre-filter so that you can intermittently change that out and you're not getting anything going into your fuel system, keeping your fuel clean. None of us need to have a bad day out on the trail because we have something plugged in our fuel injection system. So just a quick little extra insurance, you could say. I also put this twin air outwears pre-filter on the air filter. That's just a KTM part and it just goes on your air filter, helps keep it clean. Yeah, there's also PC racing skins that I've used. But these are nice because they're not oily. And you can just hand wash those, and sand and various debris will hit that and fall off, or hit this. Even if it sticks, you can pull this off, wash it, and it'll extend your air filter, I guess, times as far as you can. That'll stop some of the dust before it hits the air filter. So those are easy upgrades to add on. Another upgrade that I did fairly early on was a new chain. I actually had a different chain on there. Other than this, I just wanted to go through the drivetrain since it's winter and not riding, but that can save your sprockets. I've heard that the factory chain will wear the sprockets a little quicker because of the quality. I can't confirm or deny that because I just took some of my friends' advice who run a lot of the factory chains, and they have better luck with sprocket wear if they put a higher quality chain on there. So a higher quality chain. There's lots of good chains. RK, EK, EK3D chain is what I used initially. DID makes some great chains. Regina makes some good chains. There's other manufacturers of good chains too, so take your pick. In this case, I went with a kind of a Husky KTM factory chain, and it's blue. So take your pick. Have some fun with the chain. But if you've got some extra money, it might not hurt to go to a higher quality X-ring or Z-ring chain. But if you run the factory one and maintain it and keep it clean, I'm sure it'll be fine too. The other thing that I wanted to talk about was the Acerbis frame protectors. That was one of my first upgrades. I like to protect the bike. So those go up a little bit higher than the factory ones did. I think they were like maybe here, plus you can pick your color. I just went with white. So this protector just for the frame, that was quick and easy install, of course, just zip ties on literally. So that's kind of a nice one. Also went with a rear disc brake guard. I tried to protect the bike first before I did kind of power upgrades. So you can see this thing's been chewed up a little bit, so it's definitely doing its job. So that's a good one to put on there. There's lots of different rear disc guards you can go with. So I guess take your pick. You can also see I went with the Tusk chain adjusters here. Those are nice because they pull the wheel back in when you adjust them. And you can see the never seize on the threads in here so that it doesn't seize up, that metal to metal contact. Another upgrade is this little, I guess, front brake pedal can break off. The factory one's very thin, so that was one of my first upgrades because I didn't want to lose a rear brake. Not the end of the world if you do. This is an AMC one. It's just blue, kind of looks good. Went with a TM Design Works full skid plate there. You can see it covers the rear linkage. I wanted something when I have gone over a lot of logs and rocks with this bike, and my linkage has done fine. There's other ones that you can put on. There's billet ones you can put on and bolt on that are cool too, but I just went with this. For the kind of riding I do, I felt it was going to work best. I like this one because you can access, it does have an oil, so we're, an access hole for your oil drain. So I use that because I'll change the filter every other ride and do an oil dump in between, but I'm changing oil fairly frequently at 3 to 5 hours. So I won't belabor that point because that could be a whole video in and of itself. But go with the oil change frequency you feel appropriate. But this TM Design Works skid plate made it easier because it has that access hole. Some of the other skid plates I had didn't have that, and it was kind of a pain. And oil changes are cheap compared to a new motor and a rebuild. And for these 4-stroke motors are very complicated, so just changing the oil prevents a lot of issues. So that's just kind of my personal preference. You can see the front. I did an Aries front disc brake guard here. That was awesome. It just bolted literally right on here and here, super quick and easy. Really happy with that. Just again, a lot of protection, doing a lot of protection things here to the bike first. You can see I also have these double take mirrors up here. So these are awesome. I even had a buddy break one on his KTM and they sent him a new one for free, so that's cool. And you could run, they have circular ones, they fold down. I've hit trees, I've fallen over, and it's great. I think they look good for a mirror, and I've been real happy. I've had those on almost every bike I've owned. So you could wait till you break the factory mirrors, or you could do that right away. Maybe you wait so that you're not adding extra expense. You can see I did a Scott's steering dampener here. That has been great. I went with the sub mount. I have an installation video on that. That's not bad. You just got to get this collar on. Just watch your headset. My headset seemed to loosen up a little bit after I did that, as it seated in, so I had to tighten my headset a couple times after each ride, and then eventually it settled in, was fine. So I did the sub mount, Scott's sub mount, and then the BRP kit. That was great. It raises the steering just a little bit, which for me is good. I like my handlebars a little higher than was stock, so the sub mount was perfect for me because it does raise your bars like a half inch or so. I put some bleeders in here, STR bleeders, fork bleeders, get the air out as the forks get hot. Went with some Oxford heated grips. Have an installation video on that. That's a pretty easy one. If you're someplace warm, I would stick with the stock ones because the size, I like the stock size better. These are a little bigger, but the grips work so awesome. If you're in a cold area, you got to do it. I've been on some really cold rides this year, and these Oxford grips just really saved me. Man, I put the control here off of a little metal bracket, and this is just a ram mount for my GPS. I guess that's another upgrade there. Just a little Garmin GPS that I run off of a ram mount that just clamps on the handlebars. Have the Dirt Tricks front washer, front primary sprocket, and rear sprocket. That's their diachromatic one. TMD factory edition chain guide. I just did that when I upgraded the drivetrain. I didn't do that right away. I waited until I had a couple thousand miles on the bike. So that's something you can definitely wait on. Did a full graphics kit by, I guess it was Rival graphics. I just didn't know what to put up here, so I just stuck those on the hand guards. But I love the graphics were good quality. Really pleased with it. They went on nice. They were thick, and it just, the bike comes kind of plain. I guess I'm used to KTMs. I went with the Husky because of the linkage, and it made it a little lower, and I'm a short guy, so that was the main reason I went with the Husky. But I really miss the KTM orange and black. It's probably my preference and how it looks. So this just made it a little flashier. So I don't mind riding the bike. I mean, I wouldn't mind riding it anyway because it runs so good, but I think it looks great now. While I'm up here, I also did a XL Pro headlight with the Moto-minded mount. That went in great. Highly recommend. Went in really easy. Love things when they just bolt right in. You do lose your high beam. Will say it's on all the time after that, but it does have a high and low beam switch where you can cut the intensity a bit. So that's kind of nice when cars are coming at you. And that's a con, is I think it is a little bright for when you are on the highway. If you don't have that intensity cut, people will flash their lights at you. So I don't, it's too bad. I don't want to offend drivers, but this bike honestly is rarely on the highway. So I can get by that because I really don't run this bike on the highway much. I have a video on the canister. I was having trouble keeping coolant in my bike. So I did a canister that you remove your emissions canister up in here, and then you put kind of an overflow canister goes in, and so that it catches, when this gets hot, it catches the radiator fluid, and then it pulls it back in. You can see there's a kind of the hose in there where it pulls it back in. If it overflows into that, and it can pull it back in. I didn't have to use add any more radiator fluid after that. And then you put this, I put this on so I can see the temperature of the motor while I'm riding, which I don't know, isn't necessary, but it's kind of fun. Engine temperature is important. If it gets hot, then maybe I just go let it cool down a little bit, or just at least I'm aware of it. Tires were something I had to swap out fairly quickly. The tires that come on it are good all-around tires, but this bike doesn't see much pavement, so I needed something more aggressive. So I initially went with some Metzler 360s intermediate hard, and they were great. They were a little bit quick on the pavement, but I loved those. They did everything they were supposed to do. And then once I wore those out, I went to the golden tires, and I'm loving these. Really happy with them. Went with a fatty on the front. I might go back to a narrow tire, their narrow one next. The fatty does like to climb out of ruts, which is fine once I was aware of it, but it just is different than what I'm used to. But it does give a plush feel over roots and rocks, so no complaints. I'd run another set of the fatty in the front. It's just different. But these golden tires have been awesome. So at some point you need new tires for this bike. And then once you get new tires, you might as well balance them up. I put a rim lock in, and once you put the rim lock in, you got to balance it up. Stay tuned. I actually got a balancer here, and the Tusk one, and they're so easy to balance when you have those clip-on weights. You can get these weights on Amazon. Those have been great. Very easy to balance your own wheels. So tires, balancing your wheels, those are some things that I did with this bike fairly early on when I put new tires on. How could I forget? One of my first upgrades was the comfort seat from Seat Concepts. This is their lower one. It's got a little bit more, it's kind of scalloped out. It looks very nice. It's been really comfortable, way better than the factory one. And you can get up where it's narrow up in the front when you're doing technical stuff, and then it widens out here. I don't know if you can see, it has a little flare to it, so when you can sit back if you're on non-technical things, maybe you're just doing some highway time. So this, I should have mentioned this early on. That is actually one of the first things I did. And I usually start with protection for the bike, disc guards, and like things like this that won't break off, mechanical things, and this so I don't ruin my pants. The pre-filters, I start with things that protect the bike, and then comfort would be next, and then I went on to power. So we're going to talk about power upgrades next. Oh, and this is off of a Husky 701. It goes, the front strap goes under the seat, the back one goes up in here on these little frame bolts. It comes with multiple doodads that you can use, and this has been good. I just put the factory tools in there and a couple extras so that I could do some basic repairs if I did break down. Haven't had to break in there yet, but it's there. I don't really like how it looks. I like the streamlined look of a dirt bike, so I don't know, maybe it'll come off, but I don't like carrying tools on my backpack because it gets heavy so fast. But I don't know, it looks okay. It's just pure function on this one, but I don't know. I've contemplated taking it off just because I like how a dirt bike looks when it's, you know, streamlined. All right, so let's talk about power upgrades next. Okay, so, you know, flameouts with the Husky kind of become a problem for me. When I was up riding, I dumped the bike over, and it wouldn't, just kept dying. So then I idled up the bike using the the idle screw in there, and then it kept doing it, and it was really puzzling to me. But what I found had happened is, when I didn't even know what had happened until I installed the when I upgraded the bike with removing the emissions. And what I found was, when I dumped the bike, they talk about how the factory little jiggly thing in there isn't very good. I would agree with that, because what had happened was, when I removed the little hoses and things that come out of the evap canister, they were full of fuel, and I had dumped the bike over like a month earlier. So what that showed me is that when you dump your bike over and you fill this with fuel, the canister with fuel and everything, I don't think that the air can properly come in here, and as the bike's running, the fuel level's dropping, and you have to be able to get air through that breather, or else you can't get more fuel. So looking back, I really think my problem was that once this was filled with fuel, I dumped the bike over. I think my flameouts were because it was having trouble sucking the fluid. There was a restriction here, I'll say. So I went with this free flow air vent tube from Takomoto, and I'm not affiliated with Takomoto. You see, I've got their stickers and stuff. That's just because I think they're cool. I have no affiliation with them. I've had good luck with their products, and so I put this free flow on. Now, once you do that, I just went all in with emissions, taking the emission stuff off. So then, I removed the canister up in there, which you could leave, and just cap it off here and here. There's a Takomoto kit. You'll need their emissions removal kit and their evap canister removal dongle, which that dongle goes in here, this wiring here. And I plugged it in, just kind of stuck it up there and zip tied it. But you've got your evap canister thing that you unplug. I was actually making a video on that, and I just had, I lost the footage without belaboring the point. So sorry I couldn't deliver on that video. I tried, but so to make a long story short, I did the O2 delete, okay, using the Takomoto dongle that goes in under the gas tank where the O2 sensor goes in. Then you get a bung plug. I've removed the O2 sensor completely. You could leave that in if you wanted to give the appearance of running an O2 sensor. And then you remove all the hoses. I went with a plug in here. I went with a plug in here so that you can see that. There you go, barely, sorry. That the screw comes out of it. When you pull that hose off of there for your evap system, you put a plug on that. You put a dongle in where your O2 sensor is underneath your gas tank. Just remove this stuff, put the Takomoto dongle in. I used another manufacturer's dongle, and it caused the bike to run poorly. So I did have good luck with the Takomoto one. And I used their little piggyback fuel controller, which is right in here. I'll show you this. So here is the Takomoto EJK fuel controller. I just went with their settings that they recommend, and it just kind of, you know, goes up in here. The wiring easily goes up in here, and it just plugs in behind your throttle body. Easy to install. Just trust me on that. Little footnote, pro tip here, but dielectric grease on these little things and on the grommets, it makes these covers a lot easier to remove. So there's the little fuel controller. I also took the reeds out. For me, the kind of riding I'm doing down the highway and on trails, it was a good choice. I rode the bike a time or two with the reeds in and didn't really have problems with it. The bike just seemed a little restricted. So don't want to give you the idea you have to pull the reeds out, but I did. I did put the best Dual Sports little metal cone in the intake when I took the reeds out. But you know, if I could go back, I wouldn't have worried about that. I don't feel that's a restrictive point on this bike. And I would just take your reeds out, put on the fuel controller, get this little, you know, air vent on here so your bike can breathe. I did do the best Dual Sports bike kit for the you know, the fuel tank here and the filter, an upgraded filter in here. But you know, honestly, performance wise, I don't know that it really I gained much. So in the final analysis, if you know what I would do if I could do it over again, I would take the reeds out. But if you're doing lots of technical stuff, reeds in isn't a wrong choice. So don't want to make you think you have to pull them out. But what I did is reeds out, fuel controller, because if you give it more air, you got to richen it up or else it's going to be a problem. Got this on here so that we can get air into the tank. Got the emissions off. Oh, put the dongle. You remove your canister thing, or you could leave it on there, and you plug a dongle, Takomoto dongle, canister removal dongle into that. Put that up there. I got my O2 sensor dongle in here because I removed the O2 sensor. Then we need to uncork this. So I did use the best Dual Sport bikes end cap. It looks nice. It's black. You just remove these screws, pull off the old one, the factory one. I'm using the factory can, and then I put the silencer in that I didn't notice any restriction in power when I did that. Just makes it a little quieter. Or you can, it's real easy. It comes with this and a screw, and it has a spark arrestor in this, so it's you know, safer to use up in the forest, which is important for me since we drive around a lot of trees. And so it's worked really well. I have had no more flameouts. Once I did that, once I got rid of the whole canister system and emissions, I've had really good luck with this bike. So once again, reeds out, fuel controller, O2 delete, O2 dongle, canister dongle, Takomoto emissions kit to plug the holes of your canister and intake when you take that off. And it's been flawless for me. I haven't had any engine error codes. Some people have those. I haven't had any engine error codes. I'm so happy with the way the bike runs. It runs to me like a dirt bike now, and I haven't had any flameouts. And honestly, I think the biggest part of getting rid of the flameouts for me was getting rid of the emissions so that, simply put, I could get air into the tank as the bike was using fuel and the fuel levels dropping, that air could come in and replace that. I think that canister system is a restriction because that's really the main thing I changed that seemed to immediately stop that. And when I saw how much fuel was in my canister system, I was amazed. I guess there is a plug on your canister system, you know, with a hose that comes down here. There's a plug here, probably lets the fuel out. Maybe if I had done that, it would have let the fuel out. So I guess if you are going to keep running that whole system, that's fine, but maybe just pull that plug out and drain the fuel out of your canister so that it's not, so that air can get into your tank. So that's all the upgrades that I did on this bike. I've been really happy with it. It hasn't given me any problems. I hope this helps somebody out there, especially the part where the bike was kind of flaming out. That was really annoying and unsafe at times when you think you're going to be under power and you're not. So I hope this helps. Like I said, I do have videos on this submount, Scott's steering stabilizer installation, the dielectric grease behind the ignition, behind the mask for the ignition. I did one on the canister, you know, for the coolant system. did one on actually the drivetrain when I was upgrading the drivetrain. Used some tools that were helpful. And I'll have other videos to come. I have an oil change video on the 350. So hope this helps get the kind of the kinks, bugs worked out of your bike. But since I've made these changes, it's been just a pleasure to ride definitely one of my favorite bikes that I've ever had for riding off-road and technical situations. So like and subscribe. There's more to come. Keep riding. Have fun. Let the adventure keep going. Another thing that I want to talk about with regards to flameouts is you listen to things on the internet and you always wonder what's going to be helpful, what's not going to be helpful. And I'm used to big bore bikes like a 690 and as you can 890 over here. And so I've ridden lots of I'm used to larger bore bikes, and I found that with the 350, a lot of times you're better off just keeping your throttle constant and then feathering the clutch. And so I found that to be really, really helpful. So hopefully, that was a good tip that I got from somebody out there. Just they were talking about 350s are a little different. When I'm riding this bike, many times I'll keep my throttle, like if I get in a technical section, I used to just always modulate with the throttle. Now, if it gets real technical, sometimes I'll hold this a little more constant, not wrapped out or anything, and then I'll just feather the clutch. I'll just take this clutch and feather it as I need to modulate power to that rear wheel. I think that was a good tip. And even before I did the full upgrade on this bike with the kind of all the emissions delete, I guess you could say, I had fewer flameouts once I adopted that riding style of keeping the throttle a little more constant and then, feathering the clutch just when I got in real technical sections. But still, I did have flameouts until I deleted the emissions. That was a game changer to me. But I thought it was worth mentioning that I think riding style matters, and I think these 350s, and I haven't done clutch weights or any of that. I like the blippable nature of this motor. I don't want to change that. So that being said, I've had really good luck once I started to change my riding style and just started feathering my clutch through the technical stuff rather than just trying to do it all with my throttle. And a lot of you guys, I'm sure, are better riders than me and knew that, but when I heard that tip, it was a game changer because I usually just tried to keep my clutch out to spare the clutch and then, do the modulation with my throttle. And on a bigger bore bike, actually you can do quite a bit of that. But these 350s, I think that working the clutch a little more is a good thing. So thank you to whoever you were out there that I watched. I'm sorry, I would totally give you credit, but I can't remember. You watch so much stuff that it's hard for me to remember who it was. But that was a game changer for me. I cut my flameouts down by about 50%, and then when I did the rest of the, intake, fuel controller, free flow, tank kit, dongles, Best Dual Sports end cap, that really solved a lot of finished it for me. I can honestly say I haven't had a flame out since. So just want to talk a little bit about rider error though, or how I ride this bike differently than some of the other bikes I've ridden. Like my 690, man, that thing, it was heavy at times and technical stuff, but it would chug. It would just chug. You could chug that bike. Great bike. And it was really hard to stall. If you stalled that 690 out, if you flamed that thing out, you were doing something wrong. So whereas the 350 though, they're not as chuggy. They like to rev. So just, I guess, something to think about. All right, keep riding.